Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Kiesling, and I'm the Director of Stakeholder Engagement in the Lewis College of Business at Marshall University. Today marks the first of our Cohen Professionalism Speaker Series for the spring 2024 semester, where we will be having a discussion on the topic of real estate and risk management. This speaker series is an enrichment program offered by Marshall University's Lewis College of Business to allow students to form connections with classroom teachings and real-world applications. The theme for this semester's program is Growth and Development in West Virginia, an effort to stimulate inspiration on ideas and how we can bring more commercialization, industry, and jobs back to West Virginia. Our showcase business professionals will discuss various topics, including entry-level jobs and opportunities in these fields, required effort and education for success and advancement in these fields, beginning steps for those wishing to invest into property, creating a business, or developing property, and how to be successful in your investment endeavors. There will be a question and answer segment at the end of this discussion, but feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box, and we will get to them at the end. Without further ado, I'll introduce our panelists. So I'm grateful that our panelists have taken the time to sit down with us today to share some of their knowledge and information on this topic. So we'll get started with Ron Cohen. Ron Cohen is the name behind this program. This series was sponsored by himself and his wife, Sandy Cohen, in 2017. He's the owner of Inland Southwest Investments. He has owned, leased, and managed shopping strips, shopping centers, restaurants, development land, and more. He's a Marshall business grad, receiving his bachelor's in finance and banking in 1966. Next is Mark Cohen. He is the president and founder of CenterPoint Commercial Properties, a commercial real estate company involved in multiple aspects of the real estate industry. He has a wealth of experience and expertise in the retail real estate market due to a career spanning 3 decades, involving numerous projects and partially attributed to his family's 4-generation legacy in this field. Next is Arthur Kaplan. Art is currently retired after a career spanning 40+ years in the construction and management field. He has designed, project managed, construction managed, and estimated commercial high-rises, multifamily, industrial, and institutional projects, and more. Some of his projects include working with private clients, the state of Texas, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the government of Greece, where he was the head of department for mechanical and electrical coordination for the new Athens International Airport. Lastly, but not leastly, is Matthew Sheard or Sheard?
Sheard.
Sheard. Matthew is the Director of Capital Markets for CenterPoint Commercial Properties. He is a seasoned capital markets consultant dedicated to collaborating with the commercial real estate investors. Before his current role, Matthew served as a retail investment advisor at Marcus & Millichap's Santelli Sheard Group. There he concentrated on urban core development reposition opportunities across the Dallas-Fort Worth area and emerging market retail assets. So before we get started formally, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give some more in-depth background on themselves, their positions, and the companies in which they work. So we can get started with Ron.
Guys, welcome. I want to thank you for attending this. West Virginia, as you well know, has been in sort of a decline for a number of years. It's due to several different reasons. By my thinking, I'm estranged from it to the degree that Texas is a couple of days drive away from you guys, and there hasn't been a lot of economic development that's been created in your state for many, many years. You're on the decline and there needs to be a way for you to try to stimulate growth to get everything back working in your state. I have some ideas what I think and have discussed it with some people in West Virginia, and that concern reorienting, because of your geography, reorienting your state towards recreational type uses. And with resorts, places for people to go to play golf, to relax, to utilize your beauty and your your recreational opportunities there to attract people on the East Coast and Midwest to spend time there. But that being aside, I want to give you a little bit of background on us. The one thing that you need to know is that getting into our business is not an inexpensive venture. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of capital, and as an entrepreneur, the object is to learn financing in such a way that you can take a relatively small amount of money, borrow money, utilize that money to create something or to buy something that you can operate that will grow in time, allow you to continue growth with other opportunities as you pay off the mortgages. We'll get into that a little bit later. I'm sure Matthew will be able to expand on this as well as Mark. A little background on me. I'm going to start with my father, who was a relatively uneducated gentleman. Was raised in an orphanage, and his first work was learning the trade of being a sign painter, of all things, to go to small towns in Texas and promote the little department stores there, who were really sort of backward in the way they operated businesses. And he and his brothers went out and would take over the stores and promote them, utilizing his sign painting skills, which eventually led to selling those stores that ultimately purchased and moving to Dallas and creating a chain of junior department stores here. In the late 50s, a little thing called discount houses started to be spotted around, and these discount houses literally were the beginning of the decline of individual small stores. Because of that, he sold his stores and went into the real estate business. In my youth, I knew I did not want to go into a retail environment. And he would buy properties and develop them and then lease them back to the stores. And that was how he got his beginning in the real estate business. When he sold his stores, he went full time into the real estate business and started with really no education, with no real knowledge of operation, with having no computers, no even calculators to deal with. He would operate his properties. I knew back in high school that this was an interesting business. And when I told him I was not going to join the stores, I was going into the real estate business, that in a way precipitated his sale of the stores. So I started out at the University of Texas as a real estate major. And from that point on, I ended up transferring to Marshall because of certain circumstances, and got a degree in finance. Interesting enough, knowing that I wanted to go in the real estate business at that time, I asked my professor in investments when he was going to cover real estate, and he said, real estate, I don't even know anything about real estate. That's how, I guess, I don't know exactly how to put it, how uninformed some people can be about all the opportunities that are available. But as I said before, it's an expensive but very, very interesting methodology. And there are some great opportunities for you as students to go into this business, grow, and become very, very wealthy if you do it properly. I started out when I graduated, moving back to Dallas, becoming a real estate broker, and learned very quickly that I was not very good at cold calling on people. But I wasn't very good at analyzing, and I was very good at operating and managing the properties. And we built a very, very large firm here in Dallas. I started talking to my children about this many, many years ago. And two of my kids have degrees in real estate. One of them did not choose to go there. Mark, my son, my youngest son, my baby, is now running my company, and his expertise in operations far exceeds what I'm been able to do. He's got ideas and ways of doing things, and that's the way it should be. You got to start basis and everything working around my company, but not for my company for years. The basic things for you to know when it comes to our business is that I guess is to say that everything is a multiple of what it earns. We are in primarily income producing properties, and the object with us are returns on investments. Not only the amount of money that we put in, but on which is called a return on investment of your money, but on return on the purchase price called the cap rate. And both those things have to sort of balance out when you're doing analyzation to obtain the returns that you need to be successful in the business. One thing I will say is if the numbers don't work when you're doing your analyzation, walk away from the deal. There's no reason to waste your time on non-productive or potentially non-productive products. So as an entrepreneur, you have to do your due diligence. You have to find out everything you need when you think about potentially purchasing something. And you have to keep your family informed. You have to figure out with your family the interest in them continuing in your business. I think that's probably all I want to say as an introduction. I am available and will give out my email or telephone numbers if you so desire. If you're interested in pursuing this and need somebody to talk to, I'm available at any time. I'm retired now. I like doing this, and I'm going to turn it back to you now, if it's okay, Matthew, or Andrew.
Thank you, Ron. We can go ahead and move on to Mark now for his introduction.
Hi, I'm Mark Cohen. I'm president of CenterPoint Commercial Properties. I graduated college in 1995. I had a few years interning with different real estate companies during my college years, including one on campus. I was fortunate that a gentleman by the name of Stan Crockey and his best buddy lived in Columbia, Missouri, where I went to school. Stan Crockey, if you've never heard his name, is actually married to one of the Walton daughters of Walmart. So I was fortunate to get a year-and-a-half internship working in University of Missouri on Thursdays and Fridays for them. Once I graduated, I went straight into brokerage. It is a non-paid sales commission-based position, and I decided that's what I wanted to do. I liked the variety and the excitement of that transaction. I already knew I was going to be in real estate. I got a real estate degree as well as a finance degree. And after about 5 years of doing that, one for a large local company and then a more boutique firm, I decided that based on what I was doing, I was able to go on my own. And I launched CenterPoint in 2001. Mostly to be a leasing company. So we were doing retail leasing. It was just me, didn't have assistants or anybody else. And just worked to get a book of business that eventually evolved until we added one of our associates here who handled more investment sales and was originally a client of mine. And then we added a few more people over the years based on needs. So we grew out of an organic need and an association. And as the years evolved, we completed some 1,000 lease transactions internally between repping different local tenants or regional and national tenants. We repped tenants like Jack in the Box and Church's Chicken, did deals with Starbucks and Walmart, CVS, McDonald's, etc. Many names you know. And we did a lot of work with mom and pop small tenants. And our MO mostly was treat everybody as if they're the next great concept. And so we spent a lot of time giving attention to detail and attention to, we were never focused on fees, which that's one of the things in brokerage they'll teach you to do. We were focused on relationships, and the fees then took care of themselves. And over the years, I originally wanted to get into construction, never did. And through some of our internal portfolio properties, we were able to start. I spearheaded the remodel of several of those, and that evolved over the next 10 years. So I started doing that in about 2005. And then by about 2015, we were in full swing to remodel every property. We began helping other parties doing the same. And then rework the entire property management system internally. And eventually, based on that, launched out of client needs, we launched a third-party management company. So we handled investment sales, we handled property management, we handled leasing and other brokerage, and then using that moved into development because of the knowledge of the market. And then as that evolved, realizing how we began to syndicate and sell portions of property, shares of investments to outside investors, and start growing a capital arm. And Matthew joined us this year to launch our new capital company. So our evolution has taken years. It was organic, and it never strained us to a point that it was something we couldn't handle. We like being a boutique firm. We could have grown many times over the years, but chose to really focus on it being more of an interpersonal relationship long term, because we feel like constantly changing clients and customers, not just adding new ones, tends to be a very difficult task to manage and can put some strain on the company. So that is our background in a nutshell. I'll try to keep it short and sweet on this, and we'll get more into details for what we do. And so with that, I'll pass it back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mark. All right, for the next panelist, we can highlight Art Kaplan. Art Kaplan, do you want to give your background?
Sure. I'm presently retired after 40 years in the construction and management field. I was in the U.S. Navy for 6 years as a helicopter rescue, search and rescue pilot. My experience includes working with consulting engineers, electrical contractors, general contractors, and with specialty contractors. I have extensive experience with design and build projects, all construction and renovation, along with working on projects with accelerated schedules. Most of my employment has been on a contract-to-contract basis. During my time with all the above, I have designed, project managed, construction managed, and estimated commercial high-rise, multifamily, industrial, and institutional projects, campus on high-rise, and have developed a knowledge of all subcontracted trades, along with a deep understanding of project scheduling. I have been responsible for budget, billings, change orders, and all labor and monetary impacts on projects of up to $120 million and 4.2 billion German marks. My experience includes working for private clients, the state of Texas, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the government of Greece. I enjoy working on projects that have demanding owners and contractors, documentation procedures, and have experience with both.
Thank you, Art. We can move on to Matthew. Matthew?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Matthew Sheard. I think everybody that went before me has a good, strong, and long history. And, it's very interesting hearing everybody's background. I've worked with Mark for some time and hearing a little bit more, about him and Ron. It's excellent. Art as well. So my background, played football in college up in Rhode Island, University of Rhode Island, 1AA. And it was an awesome experience, but I, like most college athletes or like most college students, had no idea what I wanted to do. So I said, let's major in pre-med. I got smoked in all of the hard sciences the first time around, ended up going back and taking all of this hard sciences again and got educated and understood everything I needed to know about, cellular respiration and so on. And my, not at the time, I think fiance at the time, her family's here in Dallas, and we were going to move down here while I pursued med school. I always think it's important to start with that little bit of story because my father-in-law is a storied real estate developer, has been doing a lot of grocery anchored shopping centers for, the better part of 30 years at this point in time. And I interned with him while applying to med school, which takes about a year. And I said, what am I doing? Every day was something totally different. I heard, he might lose a tenant, in this shopping center, and, he's screaming on the phone. And then at the end of the day, we would sit down and talk, and, everything was fine. And I asked him, one day, this very particular story, I asked him, how's everything just okay? He said, oh, the tenant's leaving. Like, yeah, it caught me by surprise, but I've got a new tenant that's going to come in. They're going to pay more rent. I'm getting more money in income, I'll spend a couple bucks to get there, but ultimately my value's higher. And at that moment in my life, I had no idea what that meant. But it was cool and it was interesting. And I started to, spend more time and learn more and more. And, in a very short amount of time, I was working with Marcus and Millichap. I went and interviewed with every single company that I could get in front of in Dallas before making a decision to move with them. I felt like that was important. I didn't know what the different spaces in commercial real estate were, but I knew I needed to get in somehow. And I know we're going to discuss that a little bit further about what that looks like. But it wasn't necessarily easy, but you have to be careful making those decisions. Marcus and Millichap, I worked as a retail broker. I sold commercial real estate, shopping centers. As Andrew mentioned in my brief intro, I worked in a lot of urban core properties. So think, the middle of a big city, properties that, might look a little bit tired, but there's brand new multifamily that comes in, new apartments, and needs a little bit of a refresh. Usually that would happen with new capital coming into the market, purchasing these properties and spending a couple bucks to, beautify them or make them look pretty. So spent some time doing that, better part of 8 years. And then I met with my brother-in-law. He works with a large commercial real estate firm in Chicago. They build tower, primarily tower office, but if y'all haven't noticed or have noticed, office didn't do too hot during COVID and thereafter. So they did a notable deal. They bought Sears Tower, and they totally remodeled the entire thing in Chicago. They've done quite a bit. But I was in Chicago visiting him in 2020. I was in grad school at the time, getting my MBA, and I met with him at his office. His office was spectacular. It was the most modern office I've ever been in. And I was showing him a property since we were together that I was working on here in Dallas. And he said, how much is it going to cost to purchase the property and then finish it out? I was like, probably about, 30 or 40 million. He's like, it's too small. It needs to be 50 million plus. Again, 8 years into the business, I had no idea what that meant. So I asked him, why does it need to be 50 million plus? He said, well, there's a GP inside of a GP. We get 12X, and started saying numbers and letters, and it made no sense to me. I had a ton of experience. I've sold hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate, and I had no clue what he was talking about. And I was embarrassed to say that at that moment. And I leaned heavily on the real estate department at SMU, at Southern Methodist University, while I was pursuing my grad degree. And I spoke with them. I explained that story verbatim. And he said, oh, you're realizing that there's more to this. I said, okay. help me out. What does any of that mean? He goes, think about, learning more about commercial real estate finance. I was like, oh, we've helped this guy, meet this lender to get this loan. He's like, yeah, but you have to understand how that works. So in a very short amount of time, even though I had a team and our team was doing really well, selling properties, they still exist. They're still doing very well today. And I have a great relationship with them. But it was time for me to make a move, and I moved to a group to learn and finance commercial real estate, acquisitions, dispositions, refinances, development, and so on. And it took me out of the niche, whatever way we want to pronounce that, of urban core, redevelopment opportunities. And it opened me up to looking at everything. A very weird deal, for instance, is we worked on a landfill. Those things cash flow really well. The economics are phenomenal, just throwing that out there. All the way through any major food group, hospitality, think hotels, office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and so on. And then there's, at this point in my career, there's not really much I haven't seen or touched. I won't claim to be an expert in most things. But, one thing that I could look back and say very confidently, I've always sat in a room with folks very, very intelligent, much smarter than me. And I think that's a very important thing. And I know, again, something else we're going to touch on, but, every time I made a decision to make a move or pivot or move into a new role, I always looked for folks that had similar personalities to me, looked at things, I guess you could say, outside of the box. And I know Mark could, get into that much further down the road, but, thought, use their mind, and didn't just say, oh, well, this is just how it works. Okay, but why? So I wanted folks that weren't afraid to be challenged, that have seen a lot, and that we could actually collaborate with and work together moving forward. So been in the finance space now for 4.5 years. I financed hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate in a very short amount of time. But I'd attribute the I guess where I got to, or where I'm at now, as far as heading up the finance side with this group, is we see a lot, and it was always very attractive to me. And everything had a story, and we always wanted to understand the story of the real estate, the story of the ownership prior, and what we can do with it. What does the market look like, and so on. And that's how I look at every deal, whether it's a Wendy's drive-through in X city, or a totally redevelopment of, a very prominent corner in, a very prominent market. So that's a brief history. I won't take too much more time, but thank you again for having me, and I'm looking forward to continuing this.
Thank you, Matt. I want to thank you all again today for spending the time to sit down and talk with us on this panel. I think all the information that you guys have and all your knowledge that you share today will be incredibly helpful to all of our students and their professional development and career paths. So we'll move on to the discussion portion. It's going to be split into 3 segments, and those are opportunities in the field of real estate and risk management, emerging as an investor or entrepreneur, and our Q&A segment. So without further ado, let's get started on that. So one of the first questions I have for you guys is, in consideration of your fields of expertise, what steps can a student take to find gainful employment in each of your fields or industries? And we can get started with whoever wants to answer first, or
I can. Go ahead, Art.
When I started getting into the construction business, I started working for consulting engineers. That's how I learned the background of how to build a building. Electrical, mechanical, it's very intricate back then, coordinating all of these firms and all of these subcontractors. And also, when you get into this field, you have to either work in one place or travel. And to be honest with you, when you travel, there's more money involved for your salary than there is if you're working in one location. And I work from one end of this country to the other, and in Europe. And I'm not a millionaire, but I'm very comfortable with what I earn. And I have worked on many, many projects, and But if I didn't work for the consulting engineers at the beginning of my career, I never would have learned how to do what I did.
How did you first find a job with those consulting engineers? What steps did you take?
I went to the newspaper.
Hmm.
And I looked in there. A consulting engineer wanted an electrical designer, and I knew some electrical work. But when I got into the consulting engineer, I started at the very beginning. And I think everybody should start at the beginning of something when you want to get all the way to the top of something. And they taught me how to design lighting for buildings, whether it's an office building or an industrial construction, and what's involved in a building. Just because you turn a light switch on, some people don't know what happens when you turn the light switch on and the light goes on. And how does that work? You know, so I learned all of that from the beginning. And when you turn the air conditioner on and you want to get 60 degrees, I learned how to do that. You know, it's just, you know, most people move into an apartment and the lights work and the air conditioners work. And somebody had to do all of that to make it work. That's when I learned how to do it. And in commercial buildings, you know, there's a mechanical room in every commercial building that has chillers and all kinds of motors down there, and they all have to work in conjunction with each other to make things happen the way you want it to work. And that's what I spent a lot of time with consulting engineers learning how to do that. And that put me in the construction business ahead of a lot of other people.
Thank you.
I will chime in now on the real estate side. Always encourage people to be entrepreneurial, start their own business, but to have a way, there's two parts to that, and to kind of piggyback what Art said, go work for somebody, learn your craft. And in the real estate field, especially commercial, I can't speak for residential. The commercial would include the buying, the selling, the investing, the leasing of apartments, retail buildings, industrial buildings, office buildings, land, and that'll mostly cover that as far as the real estate side. There's also the finance side, there's banking, there's capital. But the first thing I would recommend is, if you don't know which field you want to get in, pick one. Try not to be a jack of all trades and just chase every deal that comes in. Become a specialist in a specific field. I can tell you in Dallas, I know every retail owner, broker, developer, tenant, but if you get me to industrial or office or land, I know a little bit about it and I have some crossover, but it is not my field of expertise. I can handle the transactions. I know exactly what to do in order to be part of it, but I'm not as educated. And having that encyclopedia-like knowledge in one specific field is key. The second part is, don't expect to make a whole lot of money in those first few years. Go to school, not school, go to work for these people to learn, and go to school on them, and so that you can become better at what you do. Now, you may align with a big company and be independent within that company. You may end up working for a large company who produces a ton of business. The great thing about brokerage, well, there's two sides of the coin. The great thing about brokerage is it exposes you to a lot within the industry. The downside is that if you're not making a deal and you're not getting up early every day and you're not on the phone and you're not, communicating and researching, you're not going to make a whole lot of money. The one thing I will tell you, and this is really more of a generational thing, is everybody loves to use their cell phones to text and email. The only way you will be successful in this business, no matter what field you choose within it, is you must be willing to get on the phone and talk to people and meet people face to face and be out. If you want to sit behind a computer all day and just kind of push deals together and point people in certain directions, you're not going to get very far. There's a saying that says about 80% of the money is made by 20% of the people, and it's more so today because of that specific. So get comfortable communicating in person with people or on the phone, and it is something that is the only way deals get done. And then once you understand your field, let that guide you as to what your next step is. Don't be afraid of it. Like I said, even if you're good at what you do, the amount of time it takes to fill a pipeline, so to speak, can take upwards of, and I tell anybody who comes to work for us that's new, has no clients, you need about 2 years to start making some decent money in the real estate business as a broker. If you can find a developer or an owner and go work for them, it's great. Maybe you can learn from that, and eventually, hopefully, you can make enough money and start investing in your own deals. If you can put them together as a broker, often you can find ways to invest, and you have a few percentage points, but over time you have that in a bunch of different situations. You can really put that together and start to have a nice supplemental income, which would then eventually, stair step you into owning your own stuff. But I think the biggest part is just start moving forward, learning your trade, learning what you do, and give it time. The 2 years about when you'll make money, it'll probably take about 4 or 5 till you really feel like you're successful. And if you do get into it, I will give you some advice. Give it 18 months. At 18 months, you will be ready to quit. If you're in brokerage or in sales, you will be tired because of all the deals you try to do, most of them will die. But you just don't have enough deals. If you can push through past 2 years, it'll start to spill out and you really will start to make money. Just you got to be patient with it. It is not something you're going to make money quick 6-8 months in. Even the seasoned people who have worked for me, who know what they're doing, just starting fresh in a new environment, it just takes that much ramp up time. So that would be my advice to you getting into the business.
Thank you, Mark. Does anybody else want to tack on to that question?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. The finance world is a little different. I'd say that, to some degree, but not 100%, you still need to have that self-starter mentality, that go-getter mentality. And candidly, I didn't really get what a self-starter was. I've heard it 1,000 times from employers, things like that. I really fully understand what it was to be a self-starter. And then, I guess 10 years in, 11 years into this business, you start to see folks that come in and go. I worked at a very big company that was nationwide or North American wide. And, you could tell if somebody was a self-starter or not. They were in early, they stayed late. They didn't wait around for somebody to hand them anything. They went and earned their business. And then there's other folks that, somebody said make 250 calls a day, 500 calls a week rather, or, somewhere thereabout, and they would go and do it like clockwork. But it was insubstantial, as far as what they would get through on the phone. They weren't really setting meetings. They weren't really pulling in business. And they were doing that and going through the motions more than owning, what they were trying to do. So I wanted to make that point, kind of piggybacking off of Mark. Getting started in the finance space, the folks that send resumes and things like that, or the folks that I've worked with that I've brought in, at my last spot or now, I feel like you need to know and understand Excel pretty fluently. I think it's very important to understand Excel, be able to navigate through it, because I spent a lot of time in Excel. A lot. I'll say it one more time, a lot of time in Excel. Understanding how, the cash flow models work, or building your own, being able to build your own, I think is very important. And there's plenty of resources out there to get started and understand that. So, what steps can a student take to gain employment in my field? There's three different groups. I'll pick 2 out in particular. There's REFM, which is Real Estate Financial Modeling. It's a paid for course, but they take you from, this is a cell in Excel, to being able to build, a full financial model on your own. It's at your pace. They have videos. They have access to folks that have written their programs and so on. And then there's one that's A.CRE. So it's Adventures in Commercial Real Estate, or Adventures in CRE. That's another one, wildly popular. I've used both of them. I think they both have pros and cons. I don't think there's cons to either. If somebody else is paying for it, do both of them. But they'll take you through and help you really understand Excel inside and out, so that when you're going out and financially modeling something, or you're getting hired for a job and they want to spot check your ability, which they do, you'll feel very comfortable in your space. And then going in and falling into a team that's doing this and has a lot of reps for you, or is doing a lot of business, it gets really easy to jump into, their model and start to make that into your own. So that's my 10 cents there.
Thank you, Matthew. Rhonda, do you want to?
Well, I'm the guy that Mark comes to see when he wants to sell a piece of property. And I look at things on a little bit different perspective than someone who's trying to sell me a piece of property. I get a presentation that gives me all the financials, and I have my own methodology that I developed on a spreadsheet probably 25, 30 years ago, when the first graphic spreadsheet started out, and using one called Multiplan. And I developed an analyzing program that anytime you change anything on it, it changes everything else. And so you put in your parameters on it, and in that parameter, it says, I want to receive this kinds of returns. Here are the local or the time interest rates that are you can borrow money at on today's basis, and work the numbers back and forth, adding or subtracting dollars to the amount to achieve the returns I want on everything. If I can't get to that point, then I'm not interested in the property. And I don't go out and look at the properties if they're local. I don't go out and look at them. I don't go out and do a lot of research on them unless I can make the numbers work. Then I get into the negotiating phase. In the negotiating phase, that can be it's a whole different story. I mean, maybe or maybe not, you'll be able to negotiate a deal. That's the next step. Then you have to close it. You have to obtain your financing to make all the numbers work together. And when you do, you end up with a quality piece of property that probably is going to make you money down through the years. The thing that's interesting about the real estate business is that the risk portion of it is, will I go vacant? Because as long as it stays full or primarily full, you're going to be making good money off of this. Not only are you going to make enough to live on or a nice income off of, you'll be building equity towards a total value that it maybe 10 or 15 times the amount of cash that you put into it. So you're earning money, and then you are building equity so that in the future you can buy more and more property. The thing that's interesting is you can refinance the property at, well, I won't say at any time, but at advantageous times. And you can borrow the money back out again at tax-free and invest that money as a down payment on other properties or a property as you so desire. So it's a wonderful, wonderful way, but it's not fast. It takes you a long time to build it up. Now, every now and then you'll get very, very lucky. Somebody will come in, and incidentally, I never put properties on the market for sale. Somebody wanted to come and buy my property, okay, that's fine. Unless I thought it was worthwhile, I wasn't interested in selling it. But occasionally a deal will walk in that will be at a much, much higher purchase price than you may think your property is worth. And when that occurs, it's an advantageous time for you, unless you have other plans, for you to sell the property, because you will increase your net worth and your capital much quicker than you would by operating the properties over a long period of time. You can take that and utilize that capital that you get from doing that to make better returns for over longer periods of time. And it's an interesting, fascinating business to be in. And it can leave you time to enjoy your life with your family, which I highly recommend. I don't think you should get absorbed enough in a business to jeopardize your family, being with your kids, taking trips, and being a family, so to speak. I think from now on, you've got pretty much my philosophy. It may or may not be in tune with other people's philosophy. I'm an individual. And so my capital needs aren't, and my ability are not in the hundreds of millions of dollars on projects. They're probably more in the, shall we say, million to maybe $10 million level. There are all kinds of levels that you can do that onto. But the object is to stay in control. Don't necessarily listen to what anybody else says. If you are knowledgeable in your business, stick to what you know. You'll do well in it, but it'll take a while to do. And I'm going to end this by basically saying, when I got into the business, I was working for $550 a month, which included $75 to park in downtown Dallas every month. And I thought maybe if I got to the point where I could earn $10,000 a year, I would be in great shape. I mean, it just goes to show you that things change, things will get better for you, but you have to be diligent in what you do, and you have to be patient. And with that, I'm going to wait and answer any questions that I can.
Thank you, Ron. So what are some of the educational requirements for those looking to enter your field? I know some of you are in different fields, like Matthew, you said you would deal a lot with finance and stuff like that. So
as far as educational requirements, I've always been under the rule of thumb that everybody should have a college degree. I think getting hired in the space, I think most firms would expect that at minimum. As far as what it's in, if it's business or finance, that's usually helpful. Real estate's helpful. But, for what it's worth, I mean, a college degree, having the focus in there is having the focus in there, but having some supplemental work. So like going back and picking back on, doing some of those, real estate financial modeling and things like that to, just show capability and the want and desire to go and be in that field, because it is very quant heavy. It's very math heavy, in the finance space here. Outside of that, I think that's really it as far as, going and getting anything. Being a broker is a little bit different. Real estate agent's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's correct. It is different. Obviously, in real estate, every state has its own licensing requirements. Texas, for example, they have one license for real estate, residential or commercial. It's exactly the same. While there are residential agents that choose to try to do commercial deals, they're more residential agents, and it's a different game. When you're dealing with consumers at a residential level, there's a lot of rules and requirements and regulations, where in commercial, it's investor level. People are more sophisticated, typically based on what is viewed by the government, and therefore they don't really bother you too much. And in some states, recognize licenses of other states. All you got to do is show up and take the test. Texas has a pretty rigorous program. You can get licensing credits or class credits from your college degree. Typically, 60 to 70% of your licensing requirements will be covered through your core classes. You'll then have to take some legal and some course state mandated courses, which you would take through a 3-day program at a real estate school or online. I think at this point, you probably need between 6 and 10 extra classes after college in Texas in order to obtain your real estate license. Once you have the license, I can't speak for every state, but in Texas, you would need a broker, and a broker who is a different license sponsors salesmen and salespeople. So your agents, salespeople, however you want to label them, would have to hang their license under a broker in order to practice real estate. You cannot just go independent. You can buy and sell and invest on your own for yourself, but you cannot do it and collect commissions on behalf of others or act in other people's favor. So that's really it. There's some other levels. Once you get that, you can become a certified commercial investment manager, also called CCIM. It's a high-level finance-based requirement. Takes years to accomplish. I think, is Matthew, you're a CCIM, are you not?
No, I'm not. It takes about 2 years.
So that is, it's an excellent course. It's almost like a small internal network, a lot of connections, very bright people that have their CCIMs. It's a pretty rigorous program. I recommend that. And there's a few other certifications you get, certified property managers, et cetera. So that's all for commercial, of course. And they all come in handy depending on exactly what you want to do. But the license is good regardless of what you're doing in real estate, because you may put something together and the only way to get paid is to get a fee. You might as well not leave that on the table. The CCIM is great because it just gives you this deep knowledge of the investment side of real estate, whether you're doing it for others, doing it as a mortgage broker, doing it as a lender, or as an investor. That is a very valuable program. It's not inexpensive, so it does have quite a bit of fees in order to obtain the license with all the courses, but definitely a good one to keep in mind. That's CCIM for those of you that wanted to write that down.
Thank you, Mark.
Welcome.
Anybody else want to add into that on the educational background? We can move on to the next question. What are some of the top attributes you look for when deciding to take someone onto your team, and what are some of the shortfalls or flags that pop up when either talking or interviewing with a potential applicant?
I guess I should probably take that one right now.
I think so.
I'll reiterate it. One, somebody who can communicate. Can you sit and have a conversation? One of the things that's a valuable attribute, and if most people are not good with this, and it takes practice, but be comfortable being uncomfortable. Be comfortable sitting without your phone, without anything to touch or read or look at, and just sit and be able to be quiet looking at somebody else, or to carry a quiet conversation with somebody who's not very communicative and be able to keep that going for an hour. I once got in a car with a gentleman to go show him a bunch of sites. Sat down in the car. Nice to meet you. You got any kids? Yep. Did you go to college? I did.
Very dry.
Yeah, let's find something on the radio to listen to, and we're gonna go 8 hours in the car with this gentleman. It was a long day, and so I would find anything we could to talk about. Learn to have a conversation with a wall, and it will make you better. That is the thing. People like doing business with people they like, regardless of whether you're better at it than somebody else. And so as long as you've got skills, and the other part is your willingness to take not take no for an answer, and never say, I don't know. Just if you don't know, say you don't know, and then go say, oh, but I'll find out, and be willing to do that. And so, that's a big factor. Really having somebody that you feel like can communicate, and that is also trustworthy with anything that you provide them. So just very basic skill, a very basic need, but it is key, and the rest of it will come. The rest we can teach you the rest of it.
I want to interject something here, if it's okay.
Sure.
It's interesting that Mark had that experience. I had one like that also, just getting started. I had listed a farm and ranch police across the street from a Texas Instruments facility in Sherman, Texas, which is about, what, an hour north of here, thereabouts, almost on the Oklahoma border. And I took him out to show him his tract of land. He's a very wealthy gentleman here in town. And so we go out, and we're in the middle of this field. And I'm looking around, and we're sitting there basically waiting for a wrecker, because driving out in the middle of the field, I sunk the car in a mud pit. And so we're waiting for the wrecker to come and pull us out. And he says, so where's the electrical lines here? And I went, I don't know. And he says, well, what about plumbing? Is there plumbing to the property? And I said, I don't know. He says, gas lines, is there any other kind of access other than here? And I said, I don't know. I felt like such an idiot. Here I was with this extremely wealthy guy who could buy and sell half the city of Dallas at the time, and I knew nothing. So I guess being prepared, knowing what you're doing when you go into any sort of conversation is paramount. I found out all about that. He did not buy the property, but it was one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned.
Thank you.
Oh, and that we did get towed out of the mud pit.
You didn't?
The drip home was interesting, bouncing around on the highway with all the mud underneath the car. But anyway.
Thank you.
I would point out some attributes that I think Mark and Ron nailed it. You have to be comfortable in your own skin. You have to be able to speak and communicate effectively, and you must be able to be uncomfortable in that awkward silence. And the first gentleman that hired me over to Marcus and Millichap, he wouldn't hire anybody unless they asked for the business, and I've adopted that when hiring other folks. So for what that means is he'll meet with you over and over and over. I went through and met with him twice. The first time was just to meet and say you're interested, and then the second time, I asked for a job. But there's folks that have met with him, 6 or 8 or even 10 times, that after they got hired, they were like, how many times did you have to interview before you got hired? I was like, just really once. And, one thing that he lived by was you have to ask for the business. You can't be so shy in this business that you can't even say, hey, is there a space here for me? And I think that's expected. So a red flag to your question is someone that can't comfortably, move the conversation into that, finale of, hey, I'd like to, do this, or I'd like to work here, or what have you. And then another one, and I thought through this and I should have written it down, but I think a red flag in the hiring process would be somebody that didn't do any homework before sitting with you. If they're looking for a job opportunity and they don't really come prepared, to Ron's point, to even know enough about your company to have an intelligent conversation, or ask, prepared questions of, hey, I know your company does X, Y, and Z. How do you handle this? Or have you looked into, anything to that point? I think that's, it's just a preparedness thing. So I would expect to have a question or two about my company that we didn't discuss, during the interview otherwise.
Thank you. Art, I know you work a lot with the. Oh.
I was in a different business than all of you. And my business was working for general contractors. General contractors, when they have a job, they put it out for bid, and there is maybe 15 to 25 subcontractors involved in this. And you learn how to deal with each one. They're no better and no worse than you are. Because nobody's going to finish the job without all of you that are on this project. So when you have a meeting in every week and you ask what the problems are, it's not only their problems, because if you don't solve their problems, everybody else's problem sits on top of that. If they can't build a wall, then you can't put anything in the wall. So you have to, you're all on the same level. And you remember that. A subcontractor may be a subcontractor, but we're all in the same business. And you have to treat everybody the same way. If they have a problem, I want my door open to come in and say, I have a problem. And how do I solve it? And you might have to get all the subcontractors in the same room and say, we have a problem. How do you think we could solve this problem? You are not you just direct. The problem is solved by everybody in the room, and everybody in that room is the same. Nobody's better or worse than anybody. And because at the end of the job, if you don't finish it within the time frame, everybody gets a problem. There's a money problem at the end of the job when it's not finished on time. And everybody has to pay a little bit. So we all want to walk out of there with a profit and no extra money out. So we all work together. And it always works out best if that happens.
Thank you. We can move on a little bit to the emerging as an investor or entrepreneur segment of this. I know we're starting to get to that 3:30 time slot. So what are some of the issues with the current state of real estate investment and land development in West Virginia, and what are some of the underlying opportunities associated with these issues? I know you guys are all kind of based out of Dallas, but how can one identify those issues or opportunities to themselves to capitalize on top of them?
Well, let me kind of start, because I'm the only one that's probably ever been to West Virginia out of this group. Well, Art did. Art built a prison there, did you not?
Yes, I did.
What's the name of the budding metropolis?
Yeah, Glenville.
Glenville.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was Glenville, West Virginia.
Well, I tried to think about this yesterday when we talked about this, Andrew, and I wrote a little paragraph here. This is a little different viewpoint being down here from being in West Virginia. I mean, you're looking at a city that, when I grew up, was 300,000 people. It was a good business city, but not much else going on. And now we're the fourth largest metroplex in the United States, Dallas and Fort Worth area, with about 8 million people. And I'm leaving as soon as I can. It's hard to drive here now, but it's a great, great business city. And I would like to say that it would be wonderful if West Virginia could develop some areas where this kind of growth and opportunity exists. But I want to just start by saying, and excuse me for having to read this, but I'm old and I don't remember stuff. From a relatively distant viewpoint, not living in your state, and just from a peripheral perspective, knowing that industry has left the state is losing population, its main industry are closing down, which is coal, if I'm correct in still doing that. I thought about development within the state and what to do. You don't have a lot of flat land. A lot of it is very, very mountainous. It's hard to develop things on the side of a hill in trying to get productive in that. So Development properties for commercial uses are limited, and there are very few densely populated areas. Huntington, when I was there, was the largest city in the state. Now it's Charleston, I believe. Am I correct, Andrew?
I'm not entirely sure on the demographics.
Yeah.
Of that.
On the other hand, the state seems to be ripe for recreational development. Beautiful natural geography lends itself to resorts, rafting, golf courses, river canoeing, and other recreational developments, hotels, restaurants, resort and shopping that supports those areas. A mountain version of Phoenix or Las Vegas is more oriented to summer rather than winter, but you know, your area in the wintertime, I think, in certain areas does support skiing.
Skiing and snowboarding, yeah.
Right, and whatever. Something we don't know much about here in Dallas. It's hot, it's flat as a pancake for most of it. It could be a hospitality mecca with all the peripheral support and businesses that were there. I'd love to see Marshall create a school of real estate and construction supported by the School of Engineering, utilizing mechanical, electrical, and civil construction, and support for the future needs of the state. Politics may have something to do with this. And there has to be a consensus in the state to get behind something like this. But I know there are other colleges and universities that do have these real estate and construction programs. And I'd love to see Marshall get involved with that. I think it would help the students that are there, that are mostly from rural areas and in the surrounding area. And it's a regional supported school. And a lot of the area there does not have a lot of construction and growth. So something needs to be the catalyst to make that happen in the future. With that, I'll turn it over back to you and to discuss if that's an area that you think is worthwhile.
Thank you. So, I'll give another question. What advice would you have to for a young person who has some great ideas for investing their time and money into starting a business, whether that be opening one themselves or deciding to buy and flip houses, starting a property management company, etc.?
My advice? Do it.
Hit it, Mark.
Do it.
Could I go first?
Please.
Yes, sir, man.
Yeah, Mark said it, just do it. It's all daunting. There's nothing that's easy. I run this little study group. I won't even call it a study group. I don't know what to call it. I mentor a couple of people, guys and gals. They're awesome. And they're young and they're trying to start businesses and buy houses and flip them and ultimately work into commercial real estate. And my question to them is often, why are you waiting to get into commercial real estate? Is it, does it feel like that's a step up? Because I think you could be incredibly successful in flipping houses and you could be incredibly successful in commercial real estate. And those aren't the same thing at all. I don't think, a step up from homes is necessarily going into commercial. I think the idea is, instead of having 1 to 4 homes, now we're at 5 and now it's multifamily. So that's one thing that we actually talk about quite a bit. One thing that I told them to do last week when I met with them, we meet like once a month, once a quarter, depends on everyone's schedule. But when I spoke with them last week, I challenged everyone to go and meet with lenders and show them, be an open book. This is how much money I have in my checking account. This is, real deal or not. This is what I'm trying to do. Either purchase this home, purchase this building. There's buildings for sale all the time. There's also businesses for sale all the time. And it's often overlooked, but you could go and find a business that has real income and go and take that over. And the startup cost is 10% on whatever they're asking. And there are platforms that show you all of these things. The thing I think we started with this, or actually it's the total opposite of what Mark said earlier. In that regard, as far as getting started up, Mark said, specialize in something. I'll say, cast a wide net, maybe specialize, as you start to get going, but cast a wide net as to what you think you're capable of. Once you find out how financeable you are, then you start asking, friends and family. That's usually the first people that you're going to go to for startup capital, and you go to them and show them what you're working on. Make sure that your numbers look good as far as how much money you can make doing this new venture and so on, and then showing them what their return on their investment can look like. But going to banks, showing them, what you have, finding out, your ability to go and pull debt. Debt is always your cheapest money that you're going to get, as opposed to equity. Equity is from other individuals, not lending institutions. Finding out how financeable you are, and then going out and finding, whatever that project is, and doing it. My first investment, I'm not at all embarrassed to say, my first investment, I got smoked. It was me and 3 people from grad school, and we lost 120 grand. We had the money to lose at that moment. It hurt really badly. Losing money, period, doesn't feel good. But we learned a lot more than we learned in grad school by going through that process, and it won't happen again, for sure. And we're still moving through and doing it, but we've taken everything that we're doing a lot better. We're way more effective at how we're presenting everything, how we're going about everything. So, in reality, it's not necessarily money lost, but in reality, it is money lost. It's not about the money, it's about the money. So sorry, Mark, you got it.
No, that's fine. Actually, I think you did a fabulous job there. I actually would take a couple of things to add to that, not further, but one, if you find something you want to put together, whether it be a business venture, whether it be an investment, it doesn't matter what it is. When you first time you present it to a friend or a parent or any professor, it doesn't matter. Because what you're going to find is there's a lot of details that you didn't think of. And if you can't answer every question, I'm sure you've seen Shark Tank and seen these people get grilled, and they know that there's 0.83% margin on the purchase of a widget that goes into the back end of something else. Know it. And that is key. If you haven't watched Shark Tank, watch it. It's a great resource on how to do things. But the big part is don't skip the details. And if you're going to put something together, it's not something you're going to put together in 2 hours. It might take you 6 months of finding out certain pieces of information, hitting a hurdle, then having a call and find out something from some public source or some company, or finding out, how much something costs. And it might take you 2 weeks just to get through to somebody to get that. But don't skip. And once you get it all done, keep presenting until every single question, but don't cut corners. That's the key thing. It's so easy just to go, it looks good enough, and you're missing key elements. And one, when you go to an investor or partner, they're going to burn you because you're going to look like a fool. But it also helps you solidify your purchase, your position, and you'll know this is an awesome deal. Like I've turned over every stone. This thing is awesome and we should do it. The second part that Matthew said, and he touched on it, is debt. The word debt, historically, you've all heard it. Oh, we don't want debt. We're not talking credit card debt. That's the wrong kind of debt. But if you have debt, that means that you're using somebody else's money to make money. Now, you may not put as much cash in your pocket today, but you're building that asset, because when you have debt, unlike a credit card debt, if you have a home or an auto, every part of every payment, as you know, goes to owning that. So now you have a bigger and bigger piece. You have your equity in that asset or that business or whatever it is. And so good debt, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And that's good debt. And you can grow infinitely with debt than you can with all cash. So don't be afraid of it. You just make sure you don't put yourself in a position where you have a nice safety net, where you've got a long run so you can make payments if something goes wrong. And if you do it right, and if you've done your homework, knowledge is key. You will be successful.
I want to add one quick been in business now almost 60 years. The only time, and I'm going to say that if you go into this business, you have to focus on it. You're going to be hit with all kinds of propositions from different other peoples and industries on can't miss deals. They have to, these are I have gone into a half a dozen other people's deals that did not concern real estate. I have never made money in one of them because I was not in control. You have to utilize your principles, your methodologies. Don't get snookered into other people's deals because whatever. You want to give your kids money because you have the money to do it when they want to get started. I understand that. But when some guy walks into you and says, I want to drill an oil well right over here, and it's a great deal. Here, it only takes $30,000 to get into it. And then you realize that at every level in that oil deal, somebody has their hand in the till. And you end up with nothing. And that includes once you've got the oil and you're selling it to wonderful major companies, they will cut you a check for your share of it on the first of the month and mail it on the 20th or 25th. So they're riding you for that period of time. You will lose money or potential money almost at every end of it. So be very, very careful. Focus down on what you know how to do and do it well.
Thank you. Art, do you want to hop in on any of that from the construction project management side or anything like that? And
Well, when you start a project, you have a value of what was bid. And the worst thing that can happen to you is not meet that value. And it takes a team to make it happen. And anybody, the problem sometimes you have is a language problem. There are certain parts of this country and this world where they don't understand what you're saying. And you have to get somebody that understands that. Mostly, the head of a subcontractor, when it comes to a meeting, and the meeting is run in English, he speaks the English. So if you have a problem, you go to him and he goes to his people and straightens it out. But it takes a team to do what I did for a living. And the problem is the team gets very big sometimes. And it takes everybody to understand that if you don't do your job, these guys can't do their job. And we all suffer at the end. So right at the beginning of a project, I make a speech about this. We're all in the same barrel. If somebody doesn't do their job, we're all going to fall out of this barrel and it costs us money. So we all have to cooperate. We all have to give and take a little bit, and we all have to do what your company bid to do. So.
thank you, Art. So we are running out of time here. So if anybody wants to ask any questions from the audience, we can go to our Q&A section. So if anybody from the audience wants to ask anything, go ahead and do that. Okay. So we have one from Peyton Weekly. He says, I'm currently in sales in the oil and gas industry and I love my job. However, I'm never opposed to making more income. Do you believe in just being an expert in one area, or do you encourage dipping into other business ventures? We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier in casting a wide net or staying in your lane a little bit, but do you guys have any opinions on that?
I'm not opposed to being good at something and dipping your toes in other things. It's hard to be a master of all trades. if you have a way to broaden your field, have multiple sources of income, diversify your portfolio, always. But I think going back to what Ron said, make sure you're in control of what you're doing and where your money goes, because it's easy to get distracted by get-rich-quick schemes or quick buck, because a lot of times there's a lot more to it. In any business, I've started to venture in I being in real estate, I'm around a lot of retail tenants, and we had one that had a pizza oven that cooked a raw dough pizza in 2.5 minutes, and they went under, and we acquired the company because of the technology and opened a store and tried. And while it's around what we do, we were not good restaurant operators. We didn't know what we were doing. We really didn't understand the technology segment. And the third was really having somebody who ran it. And if it's not going to be me running it, then if I don't have good people that I trust around it, then my resources went way more involved into that percentage-wise for this. I did most of my time at that point for this much of my income, when real estate was really where I could really go long and far very quickly. So understand what you're getting into when you expand. Make sure that it doesn't pull you down. It can be a big weight if you're not doing it right.
I think Darrell Royal said it perfectly years ago. You got to dance with who brung you. So focus on what you know the best what to do. Don't get distracted. I mean, I'm not telling you can't have some fun with some things periodically, but don't expect to make any money out of those deals. It can be fun. I toyed with a high volume discount camera store for 10 years. It was a lot of fun. Didn't make any money out of it.
I work as the director of finance here. I also have a development company, and I've also bought quite a few properties or participated in buying quite a few properties over the past few years. So what I've learned, my only connection to West Virginia is I put out a personal loan to a company from me with a group of other guys for a coal mining operation along 9 different coal mines in West Virginia. Bad idea. Ron says, understand what you know and don't really step out. Every time that you put money in and didn't have control, just not good. So you bringing up the oil thing, whether true or not for you, the coal thing is very real, and there's no money coming back to me on it. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is a lot of folks in our business and commercial real estate, when they go and find a new avenue of creating, residual income or additional income, it's usually within the same node of what they already do. For instance, I finance property, but therefore I also invest in property. It's 2 different hats. It's, adjacent to each other, but one, keeps the roof over my head. The other one creates, wealth, right? I would look at it in that regard personally from now on out. So
that's the major point here. Your object in all of this is not to spend the money. Your object is to create wealth. The wealth will allow you money coming in that you can spend for the rest of your life. You have to be able to know how to, I don't want to call it budget, that's not the right term, but you got to recognize that fact that you want more than just the income. A lot of people can earn money and spend a lot of money. It's spending and investing are 2 different terms and mean 2 different things. So you invest, you don't spend.
All right. Art, do you have any opinions on that? Or?
My business was very much different than y'all's business, but it takes a team to do what's right. The general contractor takes bids from subcontractors and the total bid, and they win the bid. So everybody has to join in and do their part to get it done right. And there's nothing more, I don't know the word to use, but there's nothing more enjoyable than at the end of a job, everybody made money. And that's what you're in business for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm, by the way, if you want me to, how do you want to handle this, Andrew? If anybody wants to get in contact with me just to talk about things, do you want me to get you my contact information, or you want me to put it out right now? I'll do either, both. If anybody wants it, certainly welcome to give you my phone number and email.
You can give that information out. We can do that right before we end this. But if anybody, I need to say it now, if anybody wants Ron Cohen's contact information or anything like that, you can reach out to me, and then I can get you in contact with Ron. That might be easy too. Let's ask, I got another couple questions here. What might a student do or experience on an internship with one of your companies?
Mark.
So, we actually do internships in the summers, and often what we do is on our side, there's a lot of back-end property updating. So we have a website, we have multiple platforms, and that information sometimes doesn't get properly transmitted to all the different platforms. Some things didn't get updated. There may be old data or flyers or images out. And so we'll bring an intern in to do that. And so in that time frame, they're learning the terms of real estate, they're learning marketing, they're learning the digital side, how the business runs to putting it out. They're learning things a little beyond real estate because they're getting into SEO and how the industry works with the competition within the industry, and how those things give us an edge. And so we'll do that. And sometimes we have analytics. So depending on your skill set, it might be coming in and analyzing real estate transactions. It might be looking up ownerships. We had an intern here last year who did exactly that with the flyers, and then went back to college and saw a development on a corner and figured out, it's not hard to find out, and tells all his friends that Raising Cane's is coming up on the corner. And they said, how do you know that? Well, he learned how to go look up information, which is very easily and readily available in public, but not something anybody really thinks about going to get. So there's a lot of basic research skills that actually translate well beyond real estate that we have our interns do.
Thank you. It's extremely helpful.
I would just say, as another note to that, that's really it on the head. There's a lot of stuff, packaging, a little bit of research, a little bit of Mark nailed that. But as you start looking for these internships, look for groups that are busy, and when you meet with folks, like, understand what your schedule is going to be, because you want to be able to spend time with the folks that you're working with and actually get to know them. They're going to be a resource down the road usually, and they're also working on so much stuff, right? So, like, if Mark and I go to lunch, we could talk about 7 deals in a span of 30 minutes. And as an intern, you get to have that same exposure to some degree, and you might not understand half of what you're hearing, but that exposure starts to kind of sear in, and it starts to make more sense as you go. So just be cognizant of that is my one note.
We have another. Is there a lot of travel required? Have you seen many successful women in this field?
I have seen successful women in this field, and depending on what you do, and depending on who you rep. So I have friends who work for bigger companies that have national tenants that they represent, so they are traveling around the country showing sites. There are people who enter this field, don't like the sales side of it, but understand the transaction side, and they'll go get a salary position at a company, at a brand. And in our case, I'm going to talk about retail, but they might go get a job with a fast food chain or a restaurant chain or a retail chain, and they're traveling the country, picking sites, negotiating, but they're hiring retail brokers in those cities to help culminate. So there's a lot of travel. I have very little travel, honestly. We stay close to home. Everything is within 99% is within drivable distance. Sometimes it's a 3-hour drive, but it's still one day there. You know, you don't spend the night. And so other than a few trade shows here or there, that's a choice that you can make. And that's an easy thing to navigate no matter what firm you're with and what you're doing. So no, the answer to your question, you don't have to travel.
In my space,
the answer to women, yes, I see a lot of successful women. Some do it as a side. I know a lot do it. If they're married and they're not as career oriented, they do it. It's a good supplemental income. But one of the most well-known retail brokers in town worked for a large company. She's since retired, but she had an encyclopedia knowledge of every property. She remembered everything, so she just had that great memory. And I mean, she was closing deals. You might make $120,000 on one lease transaction. So you could churn out a bunch of $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000 commissions, but the big ones are there. And it takes time. You don't get that day one, but there's a lot of potential, and it's really as much as you wish to make of it.
In my space, there's plenty of women, and they absolutely crush it. That just come to mind. There's 2 women that I worked with at my old shop. They are just one gal in particular. I mean, she closed $200 million of loans, not last year, but the year prior. And you know, we could do math. You know, most loan brokers get paid 1% of whatever they finance. So it's pretty easy math to do. She's an absolute beast. There's nothing that she can't look at and not understand fluently immediately. Encyclopedia knowledge, to Mark's point. Another girl we hired 2 years ago, and she was in the analyst role, and she just took to it incredibly fast. I would just say, you know, a lot of I guess from a number standpoint, we see a lot more, you know, men that apply for the jobs than women. But you know, I think there's quite a few women in my space that are absolutely, you know, beasts at what they do, especially on the banking side. Outside of that, what was the other part of that question?
There was that asked about travel. There was a lot of travel.
Oh, travel. I like to see most properties that I finance, especially if they're bigger. And I don't want to delineate and say, oh, if it's not over $10 million, then it's not worthwhile. That's not true. You know, I work on smaller deals as well. It depends really where the sponsor is. I like to meet every sponsor. Mark said this when we first started. You have to be able to meet the folks that you're working with. That's very important in the entire realm of sales, commercial real estate, or otherwise. So I like to meet everybody. So if I work nationwide, working on properties and projects right now in Florida, you know, pretty much all over the country. And as long as I can meet the sponsor, I'll go and take a day trip or 2 days out in a different city, meet them, see the property, and then get back here. But that's my choice. So
thank you. Another one is, do your company or companies offer paid or unpaid internships?
I've done both.
You've done both? Okay.
Just depends on the timing, the tasks, and what we need.
Okay.
both.
This one was from
if you want to learn the business, don't worry about the little things. I mean, if you get paid a few dollars an hour, it isn't going to make any difference on your ability to learn. And that's the key thing here. This is not an easy business to get involved with, but when you do, it's phenomenal business.
I will add to that this is actually not rocket science either. It takes a little bit of, you got to be a little bit smart, but most of it's just your commitment to finding information and not backing down from any challenge, just fighting through it. And if you just have a little bit of perseverance, you'll be fine. You'll make money.
Thank you. All right, got one more. If you were, this one was from a little bit earlier. It says, if you're not used to making cold calls to customers, how can you get better or more comfortable?
Usually practice. I mean, honestly, just get used to talking on the phone. Some people just don't like to do it. But I think the more you do it, the more you get a little bit of you get the lingo, you get sort of a rhythm, and you learn how to draw from old experiences. Early on, I wasn't very good. I mean, I didn't have a problem picking up the phone and calling people, but not having the answer and not being able to really talk intelligently. But that took a year and a half of just doing it over and over, and you just get used to embarrassing yourself a little bit. Honestly, you say something stupid, you're gonna burn a bridge. I mean, not in a bad way, but some guys are like, that kid's an idiot. I'm never gonna do business with him, and there's nothing you can do about that. But there's thousands and millions more, so you move on from that one and you learn from it, and you don't make the same mistake. I think that's the hardest part of this. I remember now we deal with a lot of tenants and management, but early on, I had to walk into a tenant face to face and tell them, for a landlord, that they weren't going to renew their lease, and the lady's crying. I mean, I'm sitting in front of her, and then after we left, they destroyed the inside of that space to get even. So you start to learn that a lot of it's a little bit of a game and a little bit of a story to make you feel bad. And after a while, you kind of get numb to that stuff. So it's the same kind of thing. You just learn to get a little bit numb. You get have enough conversations. You just get better at it. But you just, no matter what you need, don't text. Pick up that phone. Pick up the phone and call. You'll be amazed at how much further along you'll be than your competition if you'll do just that. Starting today, it's that easy.
It's just reps, right? Any game you've ever played, any sport that you feel like you were good at by the time you were in high school, or any instrument that you played and now you play well, the more you do it, you sound terrible when you start playing the violin, playing a guitar. You have no idea what you're doing. The more you pick it up, the better you get. And every time is a little bit easier, but you do get your butt kicked a few times in the front end. And it's uncomfortable, but you do it. Everybody's doing it. So,
don't be afraid to be uncomfortable and have no fear. Yeah. Nobody's going to bite your head off, and nobody's going to actually physically hurt you.
First thing that happens, you get hung up on.
Yeah, or they call you a fucking idiot.
Oh, the feeling going home after you've made a mistake is you have to do better. You do. But boy, in the beginning, it's just part of the game. I mean,
most people in our business that have some seniority that you're afraid to call, you call them. Most of them are pretty nice. They were in the same boat as you, and as long as you seem like you're trying and you've tried to kind of have your stuff together, I think you'll be surprised at the response that you get.
Yeah, most of the people will be like the gentleman I took when I sank my Oldsmobile into the mud pit. He was lovely. I mean, it wasn't his deal. That's fine. That's not the point. The point is he was nice enough to sit down and say, look, you got to know this. You have to know that. It's a learning experience for you. And it was probably a very humorous experience for him.
Look, you got to make the calls. The next call could change your life, right? So,
That's true. All right, guys, I think we're out of time here. Thank you all for joining in on this panel and giving all your information and what you have to offer to us in this limited time frame. I wish we could go all day because this is really interesting. But maybe we could set something up in the future to talk further about this.
I'm going to go ahead and give my phone number out if I can. If anybody's interested, go ahead and get a pencil and paper or however you want to write this down. But it's Ron Cohen. My company is email is inlandsw, INLAND SW at swbell.net. And my phone number is 214-207-0108. And I'm happy to talk to you and discuss any facet of this that I can.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for having us, everybody.
Good luck to everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.